Hi there, integrated science students. Wanted to put together a quick video reviewing the popcorn lab. Now, white day students, blocks 6 and 7, we've made quite a bit of progress on these popcorn labs. However, our purple day class, block 2, we haven't gotten as far. That's partially because the day that I was absent and also just our schedule the past couple of weeks. So block 2 students, this video is going to be very informational to you. You really haven't started your testing yet, per se, but if you need to watch this video to recap and know exactly what you need to do on Wednesday when I'm absent and Mrs. Bussing is in here watching you, then by all means, check this thing out. Okay, this is me answering questions for you ahead of time, or potentially answering any questions that might pop up and that you need help with. Okay, other than that, for students that are kind of progressing through this already and maybe in the middle of the lab or kind of coming to the end, a little bit of a review for you. All right, so first thing, let me pull up the document here so I can actually see it. Our major objectives for this lab is to design an experiment that tests the influence of packaging on popping rate. That's our major question. I know at the top of the paper that it says, why does popcorn pop? We kind of already know that. Okay, we kind of already know that. That's something that we can easily research and figure out the answer to if we don't already know the answer. Okay, I'm not going to give you the answer. Go find the answer. I want to know, though, and I want you to build and design an investigation that deals with packaging on popping rates. So how can various methods of packaging popping corn affect or influence the rate at which it pops? That information can be seen kind of down towards the bottom here. We get through a bunch of information kind of with the background, talks about the materials that I have provided to you, and underneath procedure, initially it says, hey, with the materials that Mr. Williams provides and any other additional applicable materials that have been okayed by me that you may bring into the classroom, you need to develop and conduct an experiment to determine the influence of packaging on popping rate. So there's your inquiry right there. What's the problem? What's the question you're asking? How does packaging influence popping rate? Okay, you could be more specific than that, but it needs to follow that premise right there. You're going to then develop a hypothesis and conduct an experiment to test your testable explanation. Remember, that's the definition for a hypothesis, a testable explanation. All right. So your hypothesis, if we were to go back to that practice sheet over experimental design that we completed in class a few class periods ago, it'd be something along the lines of, if you package popcorn blank, so tightly or in paper plates or with less oil, whatever variable you choose to change, if you package popcorn blank, then the pop rate will increase, decrease, stay the same. So you come up with some adjective that then would describe the popping rate, and there's your hypothesis, that if-then statement. It's the hypothesis that's going to get a little more specific than the question in order to give you some type of foundation to build an experiment to then actually answer the question if packaging does influence popping rate at all. Okay. Now for the variables here, all right, you want to keep a lot of them the same because we only want to test one, and the one that you're testing should be referenced or mentioned in your hypothesis. Okay. Before we get to variables, let's talk about the control group and the experimental group. The experimental group is going to be the group that we actually do the test to. So it's going to be the types of packaging or however you're manipulating or changing the form of packaging to see if it does influence popping rate. The control group is our normal group, provides baseline information. That term control group can occasionally be a little tricky. You control the experimental and the control group. Okay, the control group's just giving us a baseline set of information or what we consider normal in nature. The control group would be no packaging. If your experimental group is different forms of packaging, different types of packaging, packaging in general, then the control group will be no packaging. Take the kernels, take the standard constant amount of oil, place them on a paper plate or a paper towel and let them pop in the microwave. Okay, pretty simple there. All right. Now with the experimental group, what type or what variable or what factor of packaging are you testing to see its influence on popping rate? That's your manipulated variable. That's your independent variable. The dependent variable, pretty simple. Popping rate. Popping rate. Okay, how do you measure the effects of that packaging? By how many kernels popped out of how many kernels initially were in that package. Okay, and a rate is something over time. How many kernels popped? Over time. There you go. That's your responding variable, your measurable variable, your dependent variable, all mean the same thing. That's the data you're going to gather, and that's the data that you will collect and analyze, and you'll use to help come to a conclusion on whether your hypothesis is indeed valid or not. Is it a potential explanation to answer our question? Okay. Looking down at the sheet a little bit more here, the procedure, there's 8 lines. It needs to at least be 8 lines. Okay. It could be more than 8 lines long, 8 steps in length. All right. I mainly put 8 on there to give you a minimum. All right. You want to design a procedure, document your experimental procedure in a manner at which some Joe Schmo off the streets could come in here, grab your procedure, grab your materials, conduct your experiment, and come to the same conclusions that you did. Okay? Do not forget to do your best in documenting observations and inferences throughout the course of the lab investigation. All right? And make sure you take down that data. Don't lose anything. You've got fantastic resources in these iPads in regards to being able to take pictures and or short videos to log and document and provide evidence for your entire investigation. Use those. Use those. If you're not comfortable writing things down or not good at being very descriptive when you write things down. All right? The lab investigation rubrics, there's a stack of them over on the little table that I sit at in the middle of the room. That can also be a guide that you could use that informs you on what I am looking for in each one of the practice categories. So inquiry, hypothesizing, experimenting, researching, data collecting, data analyzing. You're not going to get through all of this in one class period, and we will take a class period and a half, roughly, one for sure, at the end of this week and next week to cover the lab report and how you will be turning in your findings to me and sharing your actual lab investigations. Okay? Hopefully this video does enough to kind of recap the lab in general and give you enough of a foundation to where you can still be creative and have the freedom to design an investigation and carry out an experiment that does indeed test the influence of packaging on popping rates. Got any questions? Give me a shout. Later.